One of the most common swing faults that I see in players, particularly players that are a little bit older, is something known as C posture. And C posture is a little bit debatable because if we first define what it is and then look at some of the best players in the world, it almost appears as though some of them have C posture. And so I want to clarify exactly what it is and what defines what's C posture and what's not. Now, what we're talking about with C posture is a rounding of the upper back. And it typically looks something like this, okay, where the upper part of the back is excessively rounded. And one of the reasons that this happens is a lot of players that don't have good hip mobility, who can't hinge from their waist, they end up hinging from their chest instead. And this is the big difference between C posture and what might appear to be C posture if we look at, say, a tour pro. And what I want to point out is that the spine is not straight. It has a little bit of a curve to it. Okay, so if this were a person and the person was looking this direction, then there's a natural curve of this upper mid part of the back, what we call our thoracic spine. So if we see a player who sets up over the ball, they hinge from the waist, and they still have a little bit of a rounding of the upper back, that's totally fine. That's natural. That's what we want to have happen. It doesn't have to be super flat, super rigid. Where C posture comes into play is, again, if the hips aren't the primary hingers and it's mostly the upper body doing the work, that is C posture. So what we want to do when addressing C posture is make sure that the hips can flex and extend. Now, one of the cool things here is that if you followed along with the S posture protocol already, some of the components that we did for that swing fault will directly apply to C posture. And the main reason for that is because if we look at the way the swing works, we take power from the ground, and that power goes from the ground through our body out the club. So it's from the ground out. Now, because the torso, the thorax area, this is later in the swing than the hips and the legs, then when we address the S posture issues, we take care of the hips and the legs, it will also benefit C posture. So one of the things that we want to do is to get the hips hinging. So this is going to be a little bit familiar. Okay, so let's erase this and let's talk a little bit more about C posture, what it is, why it happens, and then of course how can we go ahead and fix it. So when we talked about S posture, we talked about S posture is an arching of the back, it's a misaligned pelvis. Okay, C posture is very similar. It's a misalignment of your thorax. It's a rounding of the upper back. So we're going to call this misaligned thorax. And thorax is simply, if you were to take your body, pop off the arms and legs and head, you're left with just this core. We're going to refer to that as the thorax, okay? So we understand what it is, and we've already talked a little bit about why it happens. And it's two things. This is thoracic mobility, and it's also, again, core stability. So this is really similar if you look to the nature of S posture. When we talked about S posture, we talk about the butt, the glute, the strength of the muscles surrounding the hips. When it comes to C posture, it's the same thing, but for the upper body. We're talking about thoracic mobility, and we're talking about mobility of, again, this area, the mid part of our spine, a little bit of the neck, the shoulders. And for many of us, whether we're, slouching at work, whether we're this, that, or the other, we get into this posture where this is round and this doesn't move. Both of those contribute to our S posture. So if we want to improve our thoracic mobility, we really need to get the chest and the torso to open. And the first stage to doing that is what we call Scap Activation. And scap is short for scapula, which is our shoulder blades. So when we talked about S posture, we talk about our glutes being the main muscle group that we need to work to get to the hips. Well, our scapular muscles, the mid-back, these muscles are what we need to activate and open some of the mobility through the upper body. Now, once we get this scap started to activate, now we need to really open the shoulders. And this is something that a lot of people miss, is they think, okay, I'm working the spine. I need my spine to extend to get my posture more upright. But we don't realize that in order to do that, we need to open our shoulders. And this is a really cool thing that happens with the upper body, is if these shoulders are tight, they will slouch and round forward. And by its very nature, when your spine is rounded forward, it won't move in a second direction. It can't move forward and backwards, twist, and bend all at the same time. It's one or the other. So we have to get it open to be able to free up some of these other ranges. So we're going to do something called a shoulder IE press. And this is a great way to open up the shoulders and improve some of this thoracic mobility. And then while we're talking about thoracic mobility, we're going to work on improving our mobility over time, extending our spine. It's a little bit of the opposite of what we do when we're sitting. When we're sitting, we're flexed, and so we need to get into extension or arching, and we're going to do something called cobras. It's also going to work on our shoulders a little bit, but it's going to get our spine primarily, which is really great because now when we go to set up over the ball, rather than rounding this way, we're going to start to hinge through the hips while being able to maintain that posture in our spine. And that brings us over to core stability. So like we talked about with S posture, the goal with any kind of human performance is to keep the core stable while allowing the limbs or the periphery to be mobile. And that's what we're doing here. And this protocol here is very similar to what we saw with S posture. It's just now, rather than talking about the lower half, we're talking about the upper half. But again, they're all interconnected. So what's so cool about these S and C posture protocols is they play off each other. So even if you don't present one or the other, they both benefit each other from a global holistic mobility perspective here. So when we're talking about core stability, what we're going to start off with are cat-cows, just like we did with S posture. Again, getting the musculature of the core to work, to get the body to open and close, to extend and flex, bring a little bit of scrubbing and health back to the spine. And once we get that, we need to stabilize it, and that's where our bird dog comes in. Again, very similar to what we saw with the S posture protocol. Get the spine to move, get it lubricated, and then lock it in place and get the limbs to do the work. So the core is not the one that has to be moving all the time. And then lastly, we're going to finish with a new movement, a little bit different than the S posture, and it's called a bear dog. And a bear dog is very similar to what we did with the bird dog, other than rather than your hands and knees being on the ground, it's your hands and feet. It creates more demand on your core stability, more demand on being able to control your balance as you start doing the bird dog motions. This is a great progression for getting the core to stabilize. So in a nutshell, when we're talking about C posture, we're talking about this excessive rounding of the upper back. Not good for our golf swing. It's going to create pain. It's going to cause increased risk of injury, and it's going to lead to a number of different swing faults later in the swing, everywhere from how you take the club back on your backswing to how you transition to how you deliver it on the downswing. So we fix that misaligned thorax by activating our scapula muscles, getting the thoracic mobility improved, and then locking the core in and allowing our shoulders and our arms and our legs to do the work that they're supposed to do. Great golfers have stable cores and strong backs, and we need to get those muscles of your back activated. So what we're going to do are some scap activations. And we're going to lie on the floor, and we're going to bend our arms at 90 degrees, just like this. And we're going to press our arms into the ground as we squeeze our back. We're going to hold, we're going to breathe, and then we're going to switch sides. So let's go ahead and lay down on the ground, arms flat but bent at that 90-degree angle. And then we're going to squeeze as we press our arms through down into the ground, and we breathe. Exhale, relax, switch sides, and we repeat. We press as we breathe in, 3, 2, 1, and we exhale as we relax. And we're going to go back and forth to get the muscles of our shoulders and our back to wake up, which is key for a powerful golf swing. One of my favorite shoulder mobilizations is also the simplest. What we're going to do is take our arm, stick it behind our back as far up as we can. Don't force it, with your palm away from you. Once it's there, keeping your core braced, you're going to press your entire arm through your body and start to feel your shoulder kind of tingle. We inhale, 3, 2, 1. As you exhale, relax, and we switch. So that now your arm is up top, palm is now against your body. Get your hand as low as you can go without forcing it. And then again, we're going to push through our body. We're going to breathe in. 3, 2, 1. Exhale and relax. And then repeat back and forth as many times as you need to until you can feel that change in your shoulder, and then go ahead and work the other side. With so many of us spending so much time sitting behind desks or driving around in our car, our body tends to get slouched and rounded over, and it's important that we get it into the opposite position every once in a while, which is extension. We're going to do that with an exercise called a cobra. We're going to get onto our stomach, onto the ground, and we're going to bring our hands underneath our shoulders, kind of like we're about to do a push-up. And we're just going to arch our back first by lifting up our head, and then trying to just pull our chest off the ground. And we're going to start to feel a little bit of a stretch. For some of you, this might be really easy. For some of you, this might be all you need. Over time, we're going to try to get a little higher, until finally you can get yourself all the way up. At this point, you're squeezing your butt to protect your lower back. You're breathing in, expanding your belly, feeling a stretch on the front side of your body, and exhale. And then we come back out of the stretch. And if we need to, we go back in for a second or even a third round, accumulating as much time as you need to until that position feels comfortable, that you can breathe fully, deeply, and smoothly, and you feel like you're making change. Creating a powerful golf swing while protecting your back means that you need to be able to bend and twist. And a great exercise to help you do that is a cat-cow. So let's get on to our hands and knees with our hands underneath our shoulders and our knees underneath our hips. We're going to arch our back as we look up and inhale. And as we exhale, we're going to tuck our chin, round our back, tuck our hips, and look down. And we're going to go back and forth, timing this movement with our breathing until we can notice some significant difference in the way that we can bend and twist, as well as our posture when we're standing up or standing over the ball. You want to have a powerful golf swing, you need to be able to move your arms and your legs independently from your core. And the bird dog is a great exercise to teach you how to do that. We're going to get onto our hands and knees with our hands underneath our shoulders and our knees underneath our hips. We're going to try to find a flat position for our back. We don't want to be arched, we don't want to be rounded, we want to be somewhere right in between. Then what we're going to do is we're going to extend our right hand and our left foot away from our body as far as we can. Hold it, 3, 2, 1, and then slowly bring them back in and switch sides with the goal of reaching as far as we can out while not allowing our core to move around. And this is a great way to teach your body how to move independently, okay? Arms and legs independently from your core, and that's going to be key for creating a powerful golf swing. I can't think of many exercises better suited for building core strength, coordination, and overall stability and mobility at the same time than the bear dog. And the bear dog combines two of my favorite exercises, the bird dog and the bear plank. So what we're going to do is we're going to start by getting into a bear position, which is hands and knees. And we're this time going to tuck our toes underneath and raise our knees just barely off the ground. Now we're going to do the bird dog, extending our right arm and left leg out as far as we can. 3, 2, 1. Slowly back in under control, and switching sides, going back and forth as many times as you need to until you feel an improvement in your strength, in your stability, and your balance. Now this exercise is pretty difficult, so if you find that you're falling over, go ahead and keep your knees on the ground and do a traditional bird dog Do about 3 or 4 of them, and then hold a bare plank for 10 to 30 seconds. And doing them separately from each other will end up building the strength and the mobility you need to do this version. If you found any of this information helpful, please go to tourshotgolf.com to check out and learn more. And then check me out on the social medias at Facebook. Come into my free Facebook group, the Mobilitas Movers, or check me out on Instagram or YouTube, both at TourShotGolf. Move better, play better.